Welcome back on TSL today. Hi, everybody. Giovanni Heater, joined alongside Chris Coleman and Carter Will with you from Blacksburg. Chris, thanks so much for being on the set today.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive right into things. Talk a little bit of Virginia Tech football before we flip the script over to basketball. On the schedule left for the Hokies, NC State, Georgia Tech, then on the road at Duke. You're on the road at Liberty. Then you end off your regular season at home against UVA. Does Virginia Tech have a win left on that schedule, and where would it be for you?
They'll have their opportunities. UVA is not playing good football this year. I mean, it took an injury to the Georgia Tech starting quarterback for UVA to be able to sneak out a win against the Yellow Jackets. Speaking of which, if Jeff Sims is out for any extended period of time, I think it would be tough for them to win without him.
Right.
So they could face a Georgia Tech team with no quarterback. So there's two possible wins. NC State's going to be without their starting quarterback as well, but even then a win seems unlikely because this, on paper, is the best defense that Virginia Tech will face all season. So the Hokies will actually have to score points.
Right.
They will win again, in my opinion. But I think those games that I mentioned right there, UVA and Georgia Tech, would be their best opportunities.
13.5-point underdogs at NC State. Do the Hokies cover with Jack Chambers instead of Leary?
He's a 5'10", 180-pound quarterback who played at Charleston Southern his whole career.
Right.
13.5. I haven't decided my score prediction yet. I think that's going to be pretty close, actually. I don't think NC State's going to score that many points against Virginia Tech. It's just a matter of, how much is Virginia Tech going to score against NC State? They're going to have to turn it on before the fourth quarter this week. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no doubt.
So in your opinion, does Virginia Tech have any NFL players on the team this year?
Yeah, I think Mansour Delane will be a definite NFL player. I think Daquan Wright will have that opportunity. You could see one of the safeties, maybe like a Jalen Stroman. I do think Tech's most talented players are their younger players, which is a good thing, as long as they're properly developed. But amongst the upperclassmen, you just don't see a ton of guys that seem to be overly projectable right now.
So leaving this year, you'd say Tech probably doesn't have anybody.
I'm trying to think of all their seniors right off the top of my head.
Like Dax is gone.
I don't see Dax being drafted. Dorian Strong's another one who will get a chance if he can put on a little bit of size.
What about Chamari?
I don't think so.
No.
Chamari is he's a guy that played really well as a sophomore and then leveled off, and I would say his play actually went down a little bit his next 2 years. I think he's playing better this year than he did the last 2 years, but I still don't think he's equaling his performance levels of his sophomore season. And ironically, that's when Bud Foster left Virginia Tech.
It's crazy because Virginia Tech has only, I believe, had 1 year since 1993 where they haven't had anybody drafted. That was in 2019. A pretty good Virginia Tech team. Is that correct? Off the top of my head?
That's a good question.
What year?
2019, I'm pretty sure. They didn't have anybody drafted.
And which would have been coming off the 2018 season, which wasn't so great.
Correct.
And that was actually the least talented Virginia Tech defense I've ever seen.
Right.
Was the 2018 defense.
A lot of points.
And their offense that year was mostly young. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
I think that's right off the top of my head. Yeah.
I think that's correct.
2018 Virginia Tech team was 6-7.
Right. They actually probably, in hindsight, won more games than they should have.
Probably
Correct.
so.
Nobody was drafted out of Virginia Tech in the 2019 NFL draft.
Right.
According to Google.
Yes.
All right, so let's flip the script and talk a little bit of Hokies basketball here. I wanted to get your opinion, Chris, because that's coming up. Yes, we can talk about ACC and everything like that once that gets a little bit closer and feels a little bit more real. But the non-conference, right around the corner, Hokies basketball tips off in 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on this non-conference schedule for Virginia Tech? Is it too easy? Is it just right? Kind of your opinions on that.
Last year, I was afraid that it might be a little bit too hard, but then most of those teams went on to have underachieving seasons, I would say, like your Memphises and, even Dayton wasn't quite as good as expected. And certainly Maryland, who fired their coach right after the Virginia Tech game. But
fired two coaches last year.
Yeah, exactly. They were not as good as people ended up thinking they were going to be. So you never truly know before the season. You can look at it and say, I think I know, but you really don't know. And the thing is, these days, it's hard to compare to the past because the ACC used to be a 16-game conference, and then it was an 18-game conference. And now it's a 20-game conference. So there's getting to be fewer and fewer non-conference games. So which games get cut
Right.
You know, you're going to get an extra game against maybe North Carolina or Miami or some really good team. Do you really want to play that extra
Tough
really
opponent.
tough non-conference team? So it's hard to say. I'm looking, Oklahoma State. We'll see. Maybe obviously Dayton comes to Castle, and they should be a good team, although they weren't quite as good last year as people thought they would be. But the key is, Virginia Tech needs to win some of those games. That was what cost them on Selection Sunday last year. Was their non-conference schedule didn't turn out to be as good as people thought, but they really, outside of the Maryland game, which as it turned out it didn't mean anything. They didn't win any of those games.
Let's see. They lost to Xavier. They lost to Dayton. They did beat Navy. They lost to Memphis.
Right. But Navy doesn't really help you.
Right.
It's not a quad one win.
No.
So you look at these non-conference games, how many of them could be quad one wins? Right. Maybe Dayton, but that game's in Castle. And I think a quad one home win, it has to be against a top 30 team. So chances are Dayton's in the top 30? Probably not. No. So I don't see as many chances of quad one wins this year, maybe, as I did last year.
So those marquee games on the schedule, for those that maybe have not had the opportunity to take a look, maybe you consider Penn State. That's going to be in Charleston at the Charleston Classic. The only reason you say that is because it is a Power 5 opponent. Minnesota in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Dayton, obviously. Oklahoma State in Brooklyn in the Basketball Hall of Fame Invitational. And really, that's kind of it as far as Power 5 opponents in the non-conference.
And the thing is, you can talk perception all you want, but what really matters is the actual pure numbers on Selection Sunday. How many of those teams have the opportunity to be a quad one win for Virginia Tech?
Probably
Oklahoma
none.
State
Oklahoma
State might be.
On a neutral court, if they're top 50, it's a quad one win. But if it's Castle, they have to be top 30. So to me, I think Tech's best chance is to win that game in Brooklyn against Oklahoma State.
No, I would agree. I think their first quad one opportunity would be North Carolina.
Right.
At home.
Right.
Tech didn't get a quad one win last year until Miami.
That's right.
Late February.
That's right. And then they ran off a bunch in the ACC tournament, obviously. But again, that was one of the things that held down their seeding, was the lack of quality wins.
So this has been a big topic of discussion, and Gio and I were talking about it earlier in the show, but would you like to see Virginia Tech hoist the ACC Championship banner for the Carolina game, or do you like the William & Mary setup with it being the first weekend home game? What are your thoughts there?
I think it would be cool if it was against North Carolina, but at the same time, Carolina's maybe the best team in the country this year. I mean, they do have that preseason ranking, so I don't see the need of adding any extra motivation for those guys, especially when they got knocked out by Tech last year. I'm good with doing it against William & Mary. What night is that game on?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. Yeah, okay.
So they picked the first weekend game.
With the first weekend game, that makes it. I didn't want to do it on a random Tuesday when there's nobody.
So
there.
There's two games before it: Monday and then Thursday, and then the Sunday is when they're going to do it.
I'd prefer to do it if there was a Saturday afternoon game when more people could be here, but maybe that wasn't possible if you look at the schedule. I'm not sure, because you've got non-conference season is always so hectic with your traveling to whatever city or destination you're going to go to, and then you're going to have a neutral site game in there, so it can be difficult. The thing is, if Tech beats North Carolina and you ask me after the game, I'll be like, oh man, I really wish we'd waited until today to raise the ACC Championship banner.
Tech doesn't play a single Saturday game in the non-conference.
Right.
And then, North Carolina, nope, that's a Sunday. Yeah, their first Saturday game is December 17th against Grambling State, and that is their last non-conference game before they get into the normal ACC play.
And that's over break.
True. That is right. Students won't be here.
That's right.
So, like you said, the opportunity just isn't there for a Saturday.
Yeah, so I guess you could do it against North Carolina, but it kind of feels like you don't want to wait that long either. Right. That's December. And so I think they're probably making the right decision. I just wish there had been a Saturday afternoon game in there for them to be able to do it.
Right. Okay. Well, just kind of piggybacking off of where we ended last, Dayton comes into this season, for what it's worth, in the AP Top 25, ranked 24th in the country. They're going to come to Castle Coliseum. Oklahoma State is not anywhere, not even receiving votes. Virginia Tech received a singular vote for the AP Top 25. So, again, you got to hope Oklahoma State wins some games. That and Dayton is probably your opportunity at those quad one non-conference wins. Chris, your final piece of information from you. What's coming up for you on Tech Sideline this week?
Obviously, kind of a little bit different since we've got a short week, a Thursday night game. So the preview and the preview podcasts are going to be tomorrow. We'll have a Brandon Patterson article as usual, and that'll be the morning of the game, which is a video breakdown of NC State. And then I'll also piggyback off an article I did last week on transfer portal offensive linemen. I'm going to run the numbers for transfer portal wide receivers.
Okay.
For this season, like how many signed with Power 5 schools and how many are actually starting and playing well. Just
Tavion Robinson.
It's a little preview, I guess, because you know Tech's going to hit the portal, try to probably get some offensive linemen and wide receivers this offseason. But what are their chances, like statistically speaking, of actually landing guys that are going to be able to contribute at a high level? I'll use the numbers for other Power 5 teams this year to maybe determine that.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks so much for being on for the first time, and we look forward to having you many times again.
All right. Appreciate y'all.
Awesome. All right. He's Chris Coleman. Carter Hill will be back after this. We're going to quiz Carter with a little bit of Virginia Tech basketball trivia. It's TSL today on a Monday in Blacksburg.